Before we begin, share your own grandma stories in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe so we can keep these memories alive together. The first time I noticed the withdrawal, I was sitting at our kitchen table with a cup of coffee going cold between my hands. It was early October, and the morning light came through the window at that angle that makes everything look a little more honest than you'd like. I'd been going through our bank statements because Marcus had asked me to handle the bills that month. He'd been working double shifts at the plant, coming home with grease still under his fingernails and exhaustion hanging off him like a coat he couldn't take off. $3,000. Just gone. Transferred to an account I didn't recognize. I stared at that number until the ink seemed to blur. We weren't poor, but we weren't comfortable either. We were the kind of people who knew exactly how much was in our checking account at any given time because we had to. $3,000 was new tires for both cars. It was the root canal I'd been putting off for 6 months. It was groceries for 2 months if we were careful. When Marcus came home that evening, his work boots leaving tracks on the kitchen floor I'd just mopped. I had the statement sitting on the table like evidence at a trial. "What's this?" I asked. Not angry yet, just confused. He looked at it for a long moment, then at me, and I saw something in his face I'd never seen before. Not guilt exactly, more like resignation, like he'd been waiting for this conversation and dreading it in equal measure. "That's for Tabitha," he said quietly. "Her youngest needed surgery. Insurance wouldn't cover it." Tabitha, his second oldest sister. I'd met her twice, once at our wedding 7 years ago, and once at a family reunion 3 years back. She'd seemed nice enough, harried, the kind of tired that comes from raising kids on your own. $3,000. Marcus. I know. Without talking to me about it. I know. He sat down heavily in the chair across from me. Her boy needed it. What was I supposed to do? Let him suffer? I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him that we had our own struggles, our own needs. That I'd been driving on worn brake pads for 4 months because we couldn't afford to replace them. That I'd been eating lunch at my desk instead of going out with my co-workers because we were trying to save money. But something in his face stopped me. "How long has this been going on?" I asked instead. He didn't answer right away. Just looked at his hands, those big, capable hands that had held mine on our wedding day. That had built the bookshelf in our living room. That worked 10-hour shifts handling machinery that could take a finger if you weren't careful. A while he finally said, "That's when I started really looking, not just at that month's statement, but at the previous ones. Going back months, then years, 2,000 here, 1,500 there, 500, 800, sometimes multiple transfers in a single month, each one to a different account." I made a spreadsheet because that's what I do when I'm trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. I color-coded it. I tracked every withdrawal I could find that seemed out of place. By the time I was done, I felt sick. In the 3 years I'd been paying close attention to our finances, Marcus had sent his sisters, all 6 of them, over $40,000. $40,000. I sat with that number for a long time. We'd been married for 7 years, which meant if this had been going on that long, we were probably looking at close to 100,000. Maybe more. That was a down payment on a house. That was college tuition. That was retirement savings. That was the security I'd been working toward my whole adult life, sent away in pieces I'd never even known were missing. When I confronted him with the full picture, Marcus didn't try to defend himself. He just nodded like I was confirming something he already knew. "They're my sisters," he said. "They need help." "We need help," I said, and I heard my voice crack. "We need help, Marcus. I need new brakes. You need to see a doctor about your back. We're living paycheck to paycheck while you're sending thousands of dollars." "They raised me," he interrupted, and there was something fierce in his voice now. "When Mama died, I was 13. Daddy was gone. You know who made sure I ate? Who made sure I got to school? Who worked 3 jobs between them so I could have a winter coat? My sisters, all 6 of them. They gave up their own lives to raise me." I knew the story. I'd heard it before in pieces. Marcus's mother had died of cancer when he was in middle school. His father had left years before that. His sisters, ranging from 18 to 29 at the time, had stepped in. They'd kept the family together when it would have been easier to let it fall apart. They'd kept Marcus out of the foster system. I understood that. I did. But understanding something and living with the consequences of it are two different things. I'm grateful for what they did, I said carefully. But we can't keep doing this. We can't keep living like this. So what do you want me to do? He asked. Tell them no? Tell Rachel I can't help with her rent when she's about to get evicted? Tell Dawn I can't help with her car payment when she needs it to get to work? Tell Tabitha her kids can just suffer? I want you to tell them you have a wife, I said, and I was crying now. I want you to tell them you have your own life, your own obligations. I want you to put us first for once. The silence that followed was the kind that changes things. The kind you can't take back. I'm not going to abandon them, Marcus said finally. I can't do that. I won't do that. And that should have been my sign to leave. I know that now, but I loved him. God help me. I loved him. I loved the way he'd hold my hand while we watched TV. I loved how he'd leave me notes in my lunch bag. I loved the sound of his laugh when something caught him by surprise. I loved who he was, even if I was starting to hate the situation we were in. So I stayed. And I tried to make it work. I started picking up extra hours at the clinic where I worked as a receptionist. I started saying no to anything that wasn't essential. I stopped buying new clothes. I started cutting my own hair. I learned to cook cheaper meals. I became an expert at stretching $1 until it screamed. And Marcus kept sending money. Not as much, maybe. He became more careful about it. But it was always something. Always an emergency. Always a crisis that couldn't wait. The pattern became familiar. His phone would ring at odd hours. He'd step outside to take the call. He'd come back in looking troubled. And then, a day or two later, money would disappear from our account. I started to resent them. His sisters. These women I barely knew. These women who had faces and names but no real presence in my life except as line items on a bank statement. Rachel, who could never keep a job. Dawn, who'd had 4 kids with 3 different men and couldn't seem to get child support from any of them. Tabitha and her medical bills. Crystal and her legal troubles. Nicole and her student loans despite never finishing college. And Patricia, the oldest, who seemed to need help with something different every month. I resented them for needing so much, for taking so much, for not seeming to understand that their brother had his own life now, his own struggles, but more than that. I resented Marcus for not being able to tell them no. 3 years into this revelation, 10 years into our marriage, I was exhausted. Not just physically, though the extra hours at work were taking their toll, but emotionally exhausted. Spiritually exhausted. I was tired of being the bad guy. Tired of being the one who had to say no to things we wanted because we couldn't afford them. Tired of watching our dreams get smaller and smaller while his sister's needs stayed exactly the same size. I started thinking about leaving. Not seriously at first. Just in that vague way you think about things when you're unhappy. I'd drive to work and imagine what it would be like to just keep driving. To start over somewhere new. To be with someone who put me first. I never said any of this to Marcus. We'd stop talking about money because every conversation about it ended in a fight. We'd stop talking about the future because I didn't know what future we were building toward. We'd stop talking about a lot of things. We became roommates who shared a bed. Polite, careful, distant. And then, one Saturday morning in March, Marcus asked me to come with him to Philadelphia. Patricia wants to meet you, he said. Really meet you? She's having a birthday party for her daughter, and she specifically asked if we'd come. Patricia, the oldest sister, the one I'd never met. She lived 4 hours away and apparently preferred it that way. Marcus had visited her a few times over the years, always alone. I'd never been invited. Why now? I asked. Marcus shrugged. She said it's time. Said she wants to know the woman I married. I almost said no. I had work that weekend. I had a dozen excuses ready. But something in the way Marcus asked, something almost pleading in his voice, made me pause. Okay. I heard myself say, I'll come. I didn't know it then. But that decision would change everything. We left early Saturday morning, before the sun was fully up. Marcus drove while I dozed in the passenger seat, watching the highway signs blur past. We didn't talk much. We'd gotten good at that, at being quiet together. It was easier than finding something safe to say. Philadelphia appeared gradually, the way cities do. Suburbs first, then denser neighborhoods, then the city itself rising up around us. Patricia lived in West Philadelphia, in a narrow row house on a street lined with similar houses, all pressed together like books on a shelf. Marcus parked on the street, and we sat there for a moment before getting out. "You okay?" he asked. "Sure," I said. "Why wouldn't I be?" He looked at me like he wanted to say something, then thought better of it. "Patricia can be intense, just so you know." "Intense how?" "You'll see." The party was already in full swing when we walked in. The house was small but packed with people, kids running around screaming, adults clustered in conversation, music playing from somewhere in the back. The air smelled like fried chicken and cake and too many people in too small a space. A woman spotted us from across the room and started making her way over. She was tall, taller than Marcus, with gray streaking through her dark hair and the kind of presence that made people move out of her way without her having to ask. "Patricia, baby brother," she said, and pulled Marcus into a hug that looked like it might crack ribs. Then she turned to me, and I felt those eyes, sharp and assessing, look me over like she was deciding whether I was worth her time. "So you're Jennifer," she said. Not a question, a statement. "I am." "Took you long enough to come see me." Still not quite friendly, but not hostile either, just direct. "I wasn't aware I was invited until now," I said, keeping my voice pleasant. Something flickered in Patricia's expression. It might have been approval. "Come on," she said. "Let me introduce you around." The next hour was a blur of names and faces I knew I'd never remember. Cousins and friends and neighbors and people who were somehow related, but I couldn't quite track how. Patricia's daughter, the birthday girl, was turning 16 and seemed overwhelmed by all the attention. I gave her the gift. We'd brought a gift card, because Marcus had no idea what 16-year-old girls wanted, and she thanked me politely before disappearing back into a cluster of teenagers. I found myself in the kitchen eventually, helping put out food because I didn't know what else to do with myself. That's where I met Diane. She was standing at the stove, stirring something in a large pot, and she looked up when I came in. "You must be Marcus's wife," she said with a warm smile. "I've heard so much about you, all good things, I hope." I said automatically, "Of course." She laughed. "I'm Diane. I'm Patricia's best friend. Have been since high school. Practically live here at this point." We chatted while we worked the easy small talk of women who are performing the same domestic ritual in a crowded house. She asked about my drive. I asked about the neighborhood. She told me stories about Patricia's daughter, about watching her grow up. "Patricia talks about Marcus all the time," Diane said at one point. "She's so proud of him. The way he's always there for his sisters, even from far away." I must have made some expression I didn't mean to make, because Diane paused. "You okay, honey?" "Fine," I said. It's been a long drive." But Diane was looking at me with eyes that seemed to see more than I wanted to show. "Patricia mentioned you and Marcus have been going through some things," she said carefully. "Money stuff." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "She did?" "Patricia worries," Diane said. "About all of them. She knows Marcus sends money to his sisters. She knows it's been hard on you." I didn't know what to say to that. This stranger knew things about my marriage that I'd never spoken about to anyone. These people I barely knew had been discussing my life, my struggles, like I wasn't even real, like I was just an obstacle between Marcus and his obligations. "I should go check on Marcus," I said, setting down the dish I'd been holding. I found him outside on the small back patio, sitting on a plastic chair and talking with a couple of older men. He saw me and smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him in weeks, and patted the chair next to him. I sat, and he put his arm around me, and for a moment it felt like it used to, like we were a team, like we were together in this. "You doing okay?" he murmured. "Yeah," I said. "Your sister is something." He laughed. "That she is." We stayed for dinner, fried chicken and collard greens and mac and cheese and sweet potato pie, and the food was good enough that I could almost forget how uncomfortable I felt. Almost forget that I was surrounded by strangers who seemed to know more about my life than I was comfortable with. As the party started winding down, Patricia found me in the living room. "Walk with me," she said. It wasn't a request. We went upstairs to a small bedroom that looked like it served as a combination office and storage room. Patricia closed the door behind us and gestured for me to sit on the bed. She took the desk chair. I wanted to talk to you, Patricia said. Really talk to you. Not with everyone around. Okay, I said cautiously. Patricia leaned back in her chair and studied me with those sharp eyes. Marcus tells me you're upset about the money he sends us. There was no point in denying it. Yes, I get it, Patricia said. I really do. You think we're taking advantage of him. You think we're bleeding him dry. You think we should be able to stand on our own. I think, I said carefully, that Marcus has his own life now, his own responsibilities. And yes, I think it's hard to build a future when we're constantly sending money to cover other people's emergencies. Other people, Patricia repeated. That's what we are to you. Other people. I didn't mean no. It's fine. It's accurate. Patricia's voice was level, not angry, just matter of fact. You didn't grow up like we did. You don't know what it's like to raise a child when you're barely an adult yourself. To work 3 jobs and still not have enough. To make choices between food and medicine, between rent and heat. I understand you all sacrifice, do you? Patricia leaned forward. Do you really? Because here's what I don't think you understand. When Mama died, I was 29 years old. I had a good job. I was engaged. I had my whole life planned out. And then suddenly I had a 13-year-old boy to raise. You know what my fiancé said? He said, it's him or me. He couldn't handle the responsibility. Couldn't handle that I'd chosen family over him. I stayed quiet. I chose Marcus. Patricia continued. I chose my brother. And you know what? I do it again. Every single time. Rachel gave up college. Dawn gave up a scholarship. Tabitha worked nights so she could watch Marcus during the day. Crystal dropped out of high school to work full-time. Nicole had to delay getting married because we needed her income. We all sacrificed. We all gave up pieces of our lives to make sure Marcus had a chance. And he's grateful, I said. He tells me that all the time. But Patricia, that was 25 years ago. At some point what? Patricia's voice was sharp now. At some point we should just be okay? At some point the damage we did to our own lives to save his should just be magically undone. Rachel never went back to college. She works retail and barely makes rent. Dawn has 4 kids and can't afford childcare. Tabitha's ex-husband cleaned out their accounts and left her with nothing but debt. Crystal has a felony record from a mistake she made when she was 19 and desperate. Nicole's husband left her last year, and she's trying to figure out how to start over at 45. I felt something shifting in my understanding. Something uncomfortable. And me, Patricia said quietly. You want to know about me? I never got married. Never had more kids. I gave up my 20s and 30s to raise Marcus. And by the time he was grown, I was too old and too tired to start over. I built a life here, yes, but it's not the life I would have chosen if I'd had the choice. Patricia, I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty, she said. I'm telling you this so you understand. When Marcus sends money, he's not enabling us. He's not being taken advantage of. He's paying a debt he didn't ask for, but that exists anyway. We gave him a chance at a normal life. The least he can do is help us when we're struggling. We sat in silence for a long moment. From downstairs, I could hear music and laughter, the party continuing without us. I don't know how to do this, I finally said. I don't know how to build a life with Marcus when I know that any money we save, any security we try to build, could disappear tomorrow because one of you needs help. Then maybe, Patricia said, and her voice was softer now, you need to decide if you can accept that this is who Marcus is. This is what family means to him, to us. And if you can't accept it, then maybe you need to make a different choice. She stood up then and left me sitting there on the bed, staring at the wall. I went downstairs eventually, found Marcus, told him I was tired and wanted to go back to the hotel. He looked concerned but didn't push. We said our goodbyes. Patricia hugged me, surprisingly warm for how harsh our conversation had been, and then we were back in the car, driving through dark streets to the hotel we'd booked nearby. We didn't talk about it that night, just went to bed in the uncomfortable hotel room and lay there not sleeping. But the next morning, over bad hotel coffee and worse continental breakfast, I finally spoke. I need to meet them, I said. All of them. Your sisters. I need to understand. Marcus looked up from his waffle. Really? Really? If this is my life, if this is our life, then I need to understand who these women are. They can't just be names and bank transfers anymore. Something in Marcus's face changed. Something like hope. Okay? He said. Okay, I'll set it up. Over the next 3 months, Marcus arranged for me to meet each of his sisters. Not all at once, that would have been overwhelming. But one by one, in their own spaces, on their own terms. Rachel first. She lived 2 hours away in a small apartment above a Dollar General where she worked. She was 47 and looked older, with tired eyes and hands that moved constantly, like she couldn't quite settle. We had coffee at her kitchen table, and she showed me pictures of her daughter away at college on scholarships and loans and determination. I wanted to go to school for nursing, Rachel told me, had a full scholarship lined up and everything. But when Mama died, someone had to help with Marcus. Someone had to make money. So I worked, and I kept working, and here I am. She said it without bitterness, just fact. I'm proud of my daughter though, Rachel continued. She's going to have the life I didn't get, and that's enough for me. But some months, when the car breaks down or when the rent goes up, I need help. And Marcus helps. Your husband helps. And I know it's hard on you, but I'm grateful. I want you to know that. Dawn was next. She lived in a chaos of children and noise in a 1-bedroom apartment that somehow held all of them. Her kids ranged from 16 to 7, and they were wild and beautiful and too much for any one person to handle alone. Their dads aren't around, Dawn told me while we watched the kids play in the apartment complex parking lot. I made bad choices. I know that. But I've got 4 good kids, and I'm doing my best. Some months my best isn't enough. And when it isn't, Marcus helps. I hate asking, hate it, but I do it for them. She gestured at her children. Not for me. Never for me. Tabitha, Crystal, Nicole. Each visit showed me a different piece of the same story. Women who had given up their own dreams to save their brother. Women who were now trying to build lives from the wreckage of those choices. Women who were proud and struggling and grateful and ashamed all at once. And through it all, I started to understand something I hadn't before. This wasn't about money. Not really. It was about family. About debt and obligation and love all twisted together in ways that couldn't be easily separated. But understanding something doesn't mean accepting it. And as I met each sister, as I heard each story, I felt something growing in me that wasn't quite sympathy and wasn't quite resentment. It was more like grief. Grief for the life I thought I'd have. Grief for the marriage I thought I'd build. Grief for the version of Marcus who could put me first. By the time I met Patricia again the last visit, back in Philadelphia, I felt like I was carrying something too heavy to hold anymore. We met at a coffee shop this time. Just the 2 of us. Patricia looked at me across the table with those sharp eyes and said, "Well, what do you think now?" I think, I said slowly, that I understand better. I do. But Patricia, I don't know if understanding is enough. What do you mean? I mean that I'm tired. I'm tired of being second. I'm tired of working extra hours so we can stay afloat while Marcus sends money to cover emergencies that never seem to end. I'm tired of not being able to plan for our future because I never know what crisis is coming next. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you love him?" "Marcus, do you really love him?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I do. That's what makes this so hard." "Then I want to tell you something," Patricia said. "Something I've never told Marcus. Something I've never told anyone except Diane." I waited. When I chose to raise Marcus, when I gave up my engagement and my plans in my life, I was angry. So angry. At Mama for dying. At Daddy for leaving. At Marcus for existing and needing so much. At my fiancé for not understanding. At God for letting any of this happen. I was angry for years. Patricia's hands were wrapped around her coffee cup, holding it like it might float away. And then one day, Marcus came home from school. He was maybe 15, and he'd gotten an award, some academic achievement thing, and he was so proud. And he looked at me and said, "Thank you, Trish, for everything. I know what you gave up for me." And I realized something. What? That I could stay angry about what I lost, or I could be grateful for what we built. I chose gratitude, not because the anger wasn't valid, but because the gratitude was true too, and it was easier to carry. I don't know if I can do that, I said quietly. Maybe you can't, Patricia said. Maybe this isn't the life for you. And if it isn't, that's okay. But Jennifer, I need you to know something. Marcus loves you, really loves you. He talks about you all the time, about how smart you are, how hard you work, how patient you've been. He knows this has been hard on you. He knows. Then why doesn't he stop? Because he can't, Patricia said simply. Because this is who he is. And you married him knowing who he was, even if you didn't know the full extent of it. We sat there in silence while I processed that. The truth of it. The weight of it. I need to tell you something else, Patricia said. Something about the money. I looked up. About 5 years ago, I got diagnosed with breast cancer. Stage 3. The treatment was expensive, even with insurance. I needed help. Financial help. Emotional help. All of it. And Marcus was there. He sent money every month to help cover costs. He called me every single day during treatment. He drove up here every other weekend to take me to appointments. I hadn't known that. Marcus had never mentioned it. He didn't tell you, did he? Patricia asked. No, he didn't tell any of the other sisters either. He didn't want them to worry. Didn't want them to feel obligated to help when they were barely keeping their own heads above water. He just did it, quietly, without expectation of recognition or gratitude. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand what kind of man you married. He's not perfect. He's not always good at communicating. He makes choices that hurt you, and that's not okay. But he's good, Jennifer. He's fundamentally deeply good. And men like that are rare. Patricia reached across the table and took my hand. I'm not saying you have to stay. I'm not saying this is fair to you. I'm just saying, make sure you know what you're walking away from if you leave. I drove home alone that night. Marcus had stayed behind to help Patricia with something at her house, some repair that needed doing. I had 4 hours of highway and darkness to think. I thought about everything I'd learned, everything I'd seen, the sisters who had sacrificed, the husband who couldn't stop trying to pay them back, the life I'd imagined versus the life I had, and somewhere between Philadelphia and home. I made a decision when I got back to our house. I went straight to our bedroom and pulled out the box from the back of our closet. The box where I kept important papers, birth certificates, social security cards, our marriage license, and the divorce papers I'd had drawn up 3 months ago. Papers I'd been carrying around like a secret. Papers I'd been waiting for the right moment to serve. I looked at them for a long time. Then I took them to the kitchen and fed them, 1 page at a time, into the shredder. Marcus came home 2 hours later and found me at the kitchen table with a notebook and our bank statements spread out in front of me. What's all this? He asked. I've been doing some math, I said. I want to set up a system. A real system. Every month, we put aside a set amount for your sisters. Not just whenever an emergency comes up. A budgeted amount that we can afford. They can request from it as needed. But once it's gone until next month. Marcus stood there staring at me. I don't understand. I met them, Marcus. All of them. And I understand now. I don't like it. I don't think it's fair. But I understand it. And I love you. More than I love the life I thought we'd have. So we're going to figure out how to make this work, Jennifer. Let me finish, I said. I need some things too. I need you to talk to me before sending money. Every time. No exceptions. I need us to have our own savings account that's off limits. For emergencies, for our future, for us. I need you to see that therapist you've been putting off, because I think you need to process some of this guilt you carry. And I need you to understand that I'm doing this because I love you, not because I'm okay with everything. Marcus was crying now. This big, strong man who worked with his hands and never complained was standing in our kitchen with tears running down his face. I don't deserve you, he said. Probably not. I said, but you've got me anyway. He crossed the kitchen and pulled me into his arms. And we stood there holding each other while the numbers on the page blurred and the future we were going to build felt a little less impossible. That was 4 years ago. The system isn't perfect. There are still arguments. There are still months when the budget isn't enough and we have to have hard conversations. There are still times when I resent his sisters, when I feel the weight of their needs pressing down on our life. But there are good times too. Times when we meet the sisters for holidays and I feel like part of something bigger than just Marcus and me. Times when one of them calls to thank me specifically for understanding. Times when I see Marcus with his nieces and nephews and I understand exactly why he can't let go. Last month, Rachel's daughter graduated from college. First one in the family. Marcus and I drove down for it. And afterward, Rachel pulled me aside. "I know this hasn't been easy for you," she said. "I know we've asked too much, but I want you to see her." She gestured at her daughter in her cap and gown. "That's partly because of you. Because you didn't make Marcus choose. Because you found a way to make it work. So thank you. From all of us, thank you." And standing there, watching this young woman who had made it out, who had broken the cycle, who had a future full of possibilities that her mother never had, I felt something shift. Not resolution exactly. Not peace. But something close to it. Patricia was right. I could be angry about what this life cost me, or I could be grateful for what we built despite it. Both things were true. Both things could exist at the same time. That night, driving home with Marcus asleep in the passenger seat, I thought about the divorce papers I'd shredded, about the life I'd almost walked away from, about the choice I'd made to stay. I still don't know if it was the right choice. Maybe there's no such thing as right choices, just choices we make and then live with. But I know that love isn't just the easy moments. It's not just candlelight and promises and hope. Love is also the hard work of staying when leaving would be simpler. Love is the choice to build something together even when the foundation is shaky. Love is showing up, day after day, even when you're tired and frustrated and wish things were different. Marcus stirred beside me and reached over to take my hand, still half asleep. "Love you," he mumbled. "Love you too," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, because of everything, we drove on through the darkness, heading home together.